Punk rock should mean freedom, liking and accepting anything that you like, playing whatever you want, as sloppy as you want, as long as it's good and it has passion.
In the years since Nirvana became mainstream, Kurt Cobain has emerged as a guitar hero and arguably one of the last mega rock stars. Millions of people have been inspired by Kurt to learn to play guitar and write songs. Although he gave many interviews, he was rarely asked about musicianship, music theory, and guitar playing in general. How much did Kurt actually know about guitar playing and music theory?
Play guitar, but now that I've studied tablature and Guitar World magazine, I've gotten a lot better.
We also
arpeggios.
We got
The Dorian mode.
It boosted self-esteem a lot.
In this video, we'll be listening to and analyzing some of the things that Kurt said in interviews about guitars, musicianship, guitar playing, and guitar modding. And I'll be throwing in a few of my own opinions as both a fan and a musician.
Everybody's got an asshole and everybody's got an opinion.
The first clip is an interview that was taped on January 6, 1990 for a TV show out of Seattle called Airwaves. It was filmed but never actually aired on TV because the show was canceled.
We play a very powerful, high energy type of rock and roll. We move around on stage a lot and just scream with an abandon, I guess.
What advice would you give to someone who's just starting out or wants to have a musical career?
Just keep practicing and don't give up. Just never give up. Play as often as you can and be really dedicated and try to write good music and don't worry about the material ethics that go with music. It doesn't matter what you look like or anything. It doesn't matter what your product looks like. It's what it sounds like.
Okay, so there's like 3 things that he says here, which is solid advice, especially the first part. So whether you're practicing the guitar parts by yourself or you're rehearsing with your band, repetition is the key to mastering anything. Sure, for some people instruments come more fluidly or more naturally, but what's that old saying, talent is just a pursued interest? Kurt wasn't the most technical of players, but he had good rhythm. He was a good rhythm player and he developed that over time. In the months leading up to the recording of Nevermind, they were practicing daily in addition to playing gigs, and Butch Vig knew that, and that's why they were able to get such great takes for the record. So yeah, it's good to stick with it and be persistent and not give up, just like he said. There was like a 2-year period in between Bleach and Nevermind, and although they had some success, they could have thrown in the towel any time and said, okay, that was fun, let's just move on to something else now and work in a factory or whatever. But that didn't happen, they stuck with it, and they got their big break. And even if you're in a band and it doesn't work out, then don't worry, there'll be other opportunities for you. You just have to look around for them. And he hit the nail right on the head with writing good songs. And if you're just starting out, you may have to write 30 bad songs before you can write one good song. Kurt wrote good songs, but he also wrote many songs, so he got better as he went on and he improved. And for that, he had a lot of choices when it came down to record an album. The third part is interesting here because when they made it big, they elevated the status of alternative music, which wasn't at all about appearances. The grunge bands looked and dressed like normal dudes in t-shirts, flannels, and jeans. Just like he said, it didn't matter. Glam metal, or hair metal, with makeup, leather pants, and tons of hairspray was very much about the image. So Kurt was at least partially responsible for that shift in rock music, as we all know grunge and alternative music largely crushed that glam metal scene. I believe this next clip is from 1993.
What I noticed as well, not only on this record but on the records before too, there are some very fine harmonies and melodies in it, which makes me wonder, does one of you had sort of a musical education?
I don't think any of us.
Absolutely not.
Nothing at all.
I have no concept of knowing how to be a musician at all whatsoever. I mean, I don't know the names of chords to play. I don't know how to do major and minor chords on a guitar at all. I mean, I couldn't even pass, Guitar 101, folk guitar 101, everyone knows more than I do.
So I get what Kurt was trying to relate here, but I think he downplayed his knowledge here just a little bit. It seems like even with all he accomplished, he was a little bit insecure about his abilities, or maybe it was just his nonconformist personality coming through. But anyway, I do think that he knew the common cowboy chords. He says he doesn't know how to do major or minor chords, but yet during their Unplugged in New York set, before he played Penny Royalty, he said something to the effect of playing it in a different key. And while I wouldn't say he really played it entirely in a different key, he alternated the verse progression from how it was recorded, an A minor to a G, with A major to a G. So perhaps maybe he didn't know the names of the chords, but he certainly knew how to play some of them. I don't really recall many instances of him playing a traditional E major chord. I think he largely preferred to use the abbreviated E5 version of it when his songs called for an E major. Kurt did know some of the more advanced chords. In Serve the Servants, for example, the main riff is based off of a B7 to an E7, which sounds pretty cool and very Beatlish. Knowing the name of chords and notes is helpful in explaining your work to other musicians, be it your own band or at jams, but it's not exactly a requirement.
I was in band and I played snare drum during junior high and grade school. And I never learned how to read music. I just copied the other people that took the time to learn how to read, and it was just so simple. You know, boom tap, boom tap, boom tap, 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 and I just copied them. You know, just to pass. I didn't see any reason to. Even at that age, I didn't see any reason to learn anything that someone else has written. You know, if you go by a text, then you're pretty limited. You know.
Do you consider yourself being more a songwriter or a guitar player?
Oh, songwriter. I have no desire to become any better of a guitar player. I just don't. I'm not into musicianship at all. I don't have any respect for it. I just hate it. You know, to learn how to read music or to understand arpeggios and Dorian modes and all that stuff is just a waste of time. It just you know, it gets in the way of originality.
I wouldn't agree that it's always a waste of time. I think it kind of depends on what you're trying to do and what your role is. Kurt, like many musicians, wasn't classically trained, but he could hear the melodies in his head and he was able to reproduce them on the guitar. For someone with goals just to be a singer-songwriter, an in-depth understanding of music is not a necessity. But if your goals are to be a lead guitarist, learning theory can definitely be beneficial and can aid you in getting work opportunities. I've heard to work on a cruise ship that you're required to know how to read music, which I can't, by the way, and most guitarists can't. But at the very least, a band leader could ask you as the lead guitarist to solo an A, and you should be able to know what box to be in. I could see knowing too much theory may stifle creativity, but then again there's Berkeley grads like Steve Vai who is pretty creative, so I don't know.
Another question to Kurt again. You're left-handed. Do you find it hard to get the right guitar player?
Usually, yeah. It's a bit easier now because I have an endorsement with Fender guitars now, so they're making me left-handed Mustangs, and so it's a lot easier. It used to be a total pain in the ass. I mean, when we were on our first couple of tours, you know, I'd only have one guitar, and it would have to be cheap, you know, a $30 guitar from a pawn shop, and I'd end up breaking it after the show, and then the next day was consumed with trying to find a pawn shop and the few dollars that we had to buy a guitar, and then we'd have to turn the strings around and try to intonate it ourselves, and it just made for a really out of tune, raunchy experience, you know, during those first few years.
Props to Kurt for changing parts and flipping the guitars for lefty in the early days. Back then he had to do it by himself. He didn't have any money to pay somebody to do it. I think every guitarist should know how to do basic maintenance like setups on guitars, even if they eventually send them out. I've seen adults walking into Guitar Center and asking for string changes, which is kind of bizarre. I believe Kurt himself did things like pickup swaps himself during the Bleach era, like the Soundgarden stickered Mustang, which he added a custom pickguard, and the bridge humbucker from a Phase 3 High Flyer, which is pretty cool. It's said that he did that same mod on his recycled Gibson SG that he painted blue. So yeah, sometimes you have to do it yourself, even if it's a bit crudely done. I remember Eric from Nirvana Guitars said that, I think it was Pat Smear in his early days, didn't have solder supplies, so he twisted the wires together and used candle wax on the outer coating to make it a more permanent connection when doing a pickup swap. Yep, even if you have to use like electrical tape or something, if you're just starting out, you can make do.
It was a big hassle in those
All the
days.
electronics are on the top.
In fact, we even built a bunch of Mustangs one time. We bought some necks and took pieces of wood and cut out the bodies and put the necks on, and they were completely out of tune all the time. And we did a pretty good job at it.
We had this little assembly line in the garage, and we hung them up and painted them and stuff. Yeah.
Those 3 homemade Mustangs which he used were pretty cool, although it seems that they really didn't get that much use, but they were good to have as backups and to smash at the end of the shows. It's pretty fun to assemble guitars. It's a different hobby for sure than playing guitar, but fun nonetheless.
I heard about having the second guitar player. I assumed you'd stick just with simple rhythm stuff so that you could sing easier, but you're still playing the leads.
Yeah, well, that's because I know the leads, and, well, actually I don't. A lot of times, I mean, even to this day, I still haven't bothered to learn the solo that I recorded on the album. You know, I just play whatever I want, but I just still like playing lead guitar sometimes, you know?
School and Blue are a couple of examples that I can think of where he plays the solo much differently live, but honestly for those songs I prefer the live solos much more. I think he did a good job of getting the solo close on most songs, especially the iconic ones like Come As You Are, Smells Like Teen Spirit, and In Bloom. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for today. Don't forget to smash that like button, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Nirvana is a 7-letter word, and Nirvana is a concept.